So the racecourse is fairly straight on the right hand bank, but it does bend out a bit in the middle. So just try to be careful that when you're going down the bend, or down the straight, you avoid coming out too far around that bend. Stream here, it's advisable that you go just beyond the bollards and then you can start your spin manoeuvre. And be quite careful when you check the river of crews coming upstream, because they can come up quite quickly from around the bend. And staying into our bank here, don't be tempted to come across and cut this. It's actually a better line for approaching over the bridge if you stay right into the right hand bank here rather than cutting around the corner a bit. Now the approach on this arch and going downstream is a bit harder than the upstream approach. We want to stay, as I said before, quite into the right, watching out for Brown's boats again when the weather's good, because this is where they boat from. You can see them lined up just outside Chase. So staying in tight, we're going to start bringing the bows around, and it's exactly the same principle, looking to get heads of rowers lined up with the top of the arch. And be careful when using this arch after the river's been flooded, because as you can see you can get debris on the arch, and that's quite light. Sometimes the debris reaches out into arch number 2 and it can be dangerous to the boat. Once you're out through the arch, it's generally advisable to have a few strokes which are harder on bow side to pull the boat around, because you are pointing straight at the wall and it's quite a tight bend to get around. Going around this bend, it can be quite tight when you're approaching from this direction, and again you might want to use pressure just to help yourself around, particularly in 8s when you're moving fast out of it. If the boat's got a small rudder, you can swing out wide here, so we want to stay in tight, but watch out for milled at landing stage because it creeps up very quickly. You can see it there. Make sure you check that there are no crews sitting on that landing stage, because it does change what happens around this bend. If there's a crew sitting there, you have to be quite careful to stay a bit wider, avoid their blades, give them space. And as we come up to the final bend on the river, it's about 300 metres downstream from here, we want to stay tight into our bank, but as with a lot of the bends, just come out slightly wide before going into it, only slightly, because crews do have a tendency sometimes to cut that bend coming upstream, and then swing the boat around a bit earlier than you'd think is necessary. It gets you a straighter line on the exit, and you won't stray over as far to the left hand bank when you do it. So what's going to happen with this double up ahead is they're going to leave the steering too late and end up going very wide, whereas in this boat we're going to steer into the bend early, use a bit of pressure from rowers, and it's going to pull us around for a nice approach onto the downstream bit coming into the pond. Actually, it's also that the double doesn't quite anticipate how big the bend is, and they've turned in too early, stayed too tight, and now they're going to go very wide on the exit. Now coming up to Prebends, going through the middle arch on our downstream approach, and beyond Prebends is the pond. So this is an area which is a favourite for crews to sit around and do some technical exercises. There's usually quite bad discipline on staying into the sides of the river here. So it's quite common to see crews floating around in the middle of the pond, being an obstacle to you coming downstream. If that's the case, you just have to work around them. It's also common to see crews into the bank on our right, listening to their coach with their bows facing upstream. So just be careful here. And when we're proceeding downstream here, we want to be spinning before this tree we can see overhanging on the right, unless you're going into Aidenston Castle boathouse, which is just downstream.